And welcome back, everybody. Thanks to Esther and Yorat for that last session. Welcome back to the VACD from us, a full day of amazing content from the Azure community across 6 different tracks. I'm Stacey Cashmore. I've been a developer for since the mid-90s. The last couple of years, I've started sharing some of the things I've learned at meetups and conferences, and I'm going to be here with you for the next 3 hours with...
Nick. So I'm Nick Droch. I'm a developer audience PMM at Microsoft. What I do there is pretty much I try to do fun stuff with developer community, so really having a blast. I've been in development for, 35 years, if I count my early years with my TRS-80. And so, if you're joining us, make sure to join us also on chat. We want to hear from you, your questions, all of your experiences. Share those crazy pictures with us. And also, don't forget and check the link at the bottom of the screen there. Join our challenge as well. And so, who do we have next?
Well, next up, we have Rick van Bosch talking about handling Azure configuration correctly. And I'm sure we've all been through that stage of getting started with Azure, seeing just how easy it is to get a load of stuff deployed and working, and you can see it online. But that's not real life, is it? And Rick says there's a simple and quick way of doing it and a right way. And that's what Nick's going to take us through today. Rick is a coder, although officially I believe he's a principal cloud architect. He's been working with Azure since it was first introduced. And he creates stuff hands-on in the cloud and helps people migrate with migration strategies. And that wealth of experience he's going to share with us today. Welcome, Rick. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, and welcome from Eindhoven.
And, well, when you're ready, take it away.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we did have a small glitch with me trying to share my slide deck and my video. So I'm going to switch over to my screen, and probably there my video might stop working. But at least you guys will get the content, and you guys and girls will get the content and audio, right?
Okay, so, we've got audio, but I'm not sure we're seeing it yet.
Now we got the slides.
Okay, that's a good thing. So configuration in Azure done right, as you said. There's a simple way of doing it, and then there's the right way of doing it. So I'm Rick. You introduced me quite well. Thanks for that one. So let me take you through what we're going to do during this session. We will do a short introduction. I will tell you something about application settings, app configuration, Key Vault, which is for managing secrets in the cloud. Then I will talk about managed identities for Azure resources. And lastly, we will do a closing and look at what we saw today and how we can use it. So let's start with a short introduction by actually saying, so that configuration, right? What is it actually? So in the end, configuration or configuration files are files used to configure the parameters and initial settings for some computer programs. This is what you get when you look up configuration file. And in the end, things like settings and how application works, like email addresses to send email from, or connection strings, or resources like databases, that's stuff that typically goes into a configuration or configuration file. Now, if we look at a long time ago, maybe some of you still know this one. These were ini files or initialization files. A long time ago, this was how you configured an application. And you had the settings in this .ini file that actually held the settings for you. And then after a while, Microsoft started with registry and having registry as the place for your application settings. That didn't go down too well. So, for instance, webconfig came along, which was the way of configuring ASP.NET applications. And currently, we're using a lot of app settings.json files, for instance, to have settings for your applications be available for your application. So this is kind of the road that configuration has taken throughout the years. But now that we're going into the cloud and into a more cloud native application structure, these might not be the best ways to go about it. Of course, registry isn't available on PaaS offerings like App Service or Azure Functions, but also having stuff in a web config or in an app settings.json file means that it's tied to that specific application, which might also mean that if you have, for instance, one database that's being used by a lot of different services, you might have that setting for that one database in a lot of locations. So tied to all of the applications that you're actually using that database in. So there's a better way to do this. If you would like to share your configuration throughout different types of applications. First of all, let's see how we tie an application setting to an application if we are using Azure. So that's something that's called application settings. And if we take this example of the Azure portal, we will see that on the left-hand side, we get all of the blades that we can choose under, in this case, an app service. And there you can see the selected blade at this point is configuration. So configuration enables you to have application-specific settings and application-specific connection strings. And there's also some general settings about the app service that you're actually running, like the version of .NET that you would like to target, and all that kind of stuff. Now, this is how application settings are available in the portal since early app services. These application settings are being made available to the application through environment variables. So if you, for instance, take an ASP.NET or ASP.NET Core application and you host it on an app service, then the settings that you put in configuration settings are actually available as environment variables. It's like the app settings element in the web config of older ASP.NET projects or the new app settings.json file. And values that you put in application settings configuration actually override the ones that are in web config or app settings.json, which means that you can have a value specified in application settings in the cloud. And when you push, your web config or app settings.json file will travel with the application into the cloud. However, the setting that you have specified in application settings will always overrule. This enables you to have, for instance, development settings in your local web config or in your app settings.local.json file, and then specify production values in the app settings of the Azure App Service. These application settings are encrypted at rest and they are hidden by default, which means they will not be available if you click on configuration in, let's say, a demo during a session that's being broadcast on the internet. And they enable bulk edit, which is actually quite cool. Now, as I said, especially with the fact that microservices are here to stay probably, and the fact that we have all types of serverless applications like functions targeting our resources as well, having these settings be available in a central location would be awesome. So then you have one location where you can handle the dials. And for instance, if your database is migrated into a different type of database or to a different location, so your connection string should change, you can do so on one location, and that will propagate through all of your applications. Now, that would be awesome, and that's where app configuration comes in. So app configuration is a service in Azure that actually enables you to have a universal, fully managed configuration store in the cloud available. It enables fast retrieval of configurations for any Azure application, and you have complete data encryption, both at rest and in transit. And then the cool thing is, Microsoft is targeting open source more and more. I think that's an awesome thing that's happening to Microsoft and its ecosystem. And it also means that app configuration will tie in natively with a lot of popular frameworks. So not only .NET, but also, for instance, Java Spring. What having a central location for your application configuration enables you to do is to reduce the configuration complexity across multiple environments. So as I said, with microservices or maybe even micro frontends being front and center lately, and all types of serverless applications that we have as addition to our applications to actually form some sort of a ecosystem of applications that work with our data, it's really cool to have one central location to have that configuration so that it reduces complexity. It also improves security because it separates out configuration from code. So for instance, if you have a connection to a database, it's really better to not have that configuration anywhere in your application or in the configuration of your application that's committed to Git. I am going to tell you a little bit extra information later on because storing your secrets straight in app configuration might also not be the best solution, but we will dive into that later. First of all, I would like to address something about pricing because Azure App Configuration is out of preview for quite some time now, and pricing has been made available quite some time ago. And as you can see, you can have one free Azure App Configuration resource within a subscription. So each subscription can have one free tier of app configuration available. Otherwise, you'll get the standard. So with free, you get 10 megabytes of storage. Per resource, you get a 7-day revision history, and you can do 1,000 requests per day. And after those 1,000 requests, you'll get 429 results. You don't get an SLA since it's the free version, but also you don't pay money. Now, the priced version is better. Actually, it's been GA since February 19th of this year. It gives you 20,000 requests per hour within the build quota, and it gets you all the free tier functionality plus encryption with your own managed keys and private link support. Now, private link is something that I could go on and talk for another hour probably, but unfortunately we don't have time for that one, so I'll keep it to this for now. The cost at this point is just over €1 a day, plus an overage charge with 5.1 cents for each 10,000 requests that you do. And the first 200,000 requests are included in your daily charge or your daily coverage. So going to a pricing example, just to get this out of the way, if you have an average of 400,000 requests a day, which I think are a lot of requests, your daily costs for having this app configuration up and running would be €1 and 1.2 cents, because that's the base charge per day. And then you pay an extra of 200,000 divided by 10,000 times 5 cents is another euro and 2 cents for the overage of your requests. So with an average of 400,000 requests per day, your daily cost would be a total of €2 and 3 cents for that day. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a relatively small price to pay, given all the benefits that you get from it. But you shouldn't take my word for it. We should have a look at a demo and see if we can get that stuff running and see why it's so awesome to have it running. So I'm going to go into, yeah, I can see that my screen is still shared, so that's a good thing. I'm going to go into Visual Studio right away. And the reason I'm doing this, and I think I will bump it up just a little bit to make sure that it's legible also on somewhat smaller screens. The reason I'm doing this is here we have app settings.development.json, right? These are my local settings, and then I have a setting with the awesome name setting1, and it has the value, here's a local value for setting1. That's my development version. My app settings version, I'm really happy that the secret is now out of reach. You can see here that this value is from app settings.json, and I actually added some HTML markup there, which you would never do normally. But right now I do this to make it cleaner on the display later on. Now, this is the value that we have locally, but it is the value for our production environment, right? So if I now jump into my Azure environment, and I'll go and take this one. You can see that I have a few types of resources available. Can I really not make this any? Oh, there we go. Just a little bit smaller, and at least it fits the screen. So one of the cool things that we have here is the application itself. This is actually a deployed version of the application that we just saw. And if we go in there, we can see that this is a website running .NET Core. It had some requests earlier today. And if we go into configuration, we're not going to see anything that looks like setting 1. So looking in this right here, we don't have a setting 1 anywhere, which means it should take the version that's in app settings.json. Now, first of all, let's have a look at the app settings.json. And maybe some of you knew this already, but if you go to the kudu location of your app service, and then you add /dev, you get something that looks a lot like Visual Studio Code that enables you to do some editing online. So right here, this is the app settings.json in the application. And to make sure that we see this, here's the actual result of the website. It says configuration in Azure done right. Here's the value for setting 1. This value is from app settings.json. Now, if I refresh this, I probably get a small a cold start thing, but I will get, again, this value is from app settings.json. And just so you know, is I'm going to create this in, or change this and make it vacd for Virtual Azure Community Day. And then if I refresh it here, we can see straight away this value is from vacd. So we're actually taking the app settings version right here. Now, what I actually wanted to show is that if we go into configuration again, and I add a new application setting, and I call it setting 1, and then I will say this value is from config settings. Wow. Just typing in front of an audience, right? So, or actually I should say application settings, because then we can distinct it better from the other one. So I'm going to save this down, and then of course this is going to have that small slow start again here. If I get a refresh on the application, there it goes. As you can see on the top now, it's loading. And then as soon as this runs, we will see this value is from application settings. That's something that we put there, right? So the code didn't change. The only thing I changed was in application settings, I now entered this setting, and as you can see, it overrides my app settings.json. So that's the first level of getting configuration in a manageable structure, because you can now change this in the portal. But we want more. We don't want this to be in each application. We want this to be in app configuration. So we only need to do a small thing for this. So if I go back to the resource group and I go to the app configuration that I have right here, let's have a look at what we have in an app configuration, because we don't only have access keys that enables you to connect to app configuration. We also have Configuration Explorer, where we can actually see some of the settings that we have in Azure App Configuration available. And now I think I have the same version available there as I have in my head. So if I put a setting 1 over here, and I say this is from app config external, just to make sure that we have something that's really explicit, and it's created, and I refresh it just to make sure. Then we go to the application, and while I click around, I'm going to tell you that Azure App Configuration does support auto refreshing when keys change. For now, I chose not to implement this, but you can have your application automatically re-get all of the information that it gets from Azure App Configuration as soon as a specific value or any value changes. So if we refresh this one right now once again, I hope that we will get that this value is from appconfig external, or at least that's what I expect it to be. So just a little bit of slow start or cold start, that's not an issue. And here we go. This is from appconfig external. Now still, as you can see, the application hasn't changed, but the values that it picks up have. Now, let me show you how that's done, because it's actually really simple. Right here, there's this one thing that we added. And let me get rid of this one so that we have a full view of what's actually happening. And I only need to show it up, up until here, and then just a little. Dude, why do you do this? Okay, last chance. Here we go. So what we actually did is in our startup of our create host builder of our application, we get iConfiguration, right? And iConfiguration is the standard for getting configuration in an ASP.NET application. And what happened actually is that we get the iConfiguration builder right here, and we get it passed into configure app configuration, the method that you can see right here. And this one is one that you get when you install the correct NuGet package for actually working with Azure App Configuration. Now, what we do is we build the configuration builder because we're going to want to get a setting from our settings environment, so from the iConfiguration. And then we are going to configure Azure App Configuration, and we're going to say, I would like to connect to this app configuration connection string. And this app configuration connection string is actually sort of a connection string that you have for, let's say, SQL or storage or something else external. But that's also straight up the issue that we have with this approach. We now have an app configuration connection string that's actually a gateway into the storage of all of our secrets, right? Because the app configuration will hold the connection strings to storage, to SQL, to anything, but there will also be some secrets in there because those are in connection strings. And that's not what we want to do. We want to get those out completely. That's something that we will touch on in a little bit. The only thing I would like to say is this is the only thing that we do to add app configuration to our ASP.NET application. Now, to show you how this, or what this looks like in the actual index page where we get the value, this is where things get interesting. This field only holds the normal iConfiguration that we know in ASP.NET. And then there's a property that's actually a setting one string, which we use to output our information. And in the constructor, we get the normal, let's say, iConfiguration in our constructor, and we put that in the field that we defined over here. And then for my code, it's completely transparent that I need to get a configuration value. And in this case, I'm going to get a value of type string with the name setting one, and I will put that in the setting one property, and then that's output on the page. So for me as a page developer, let's say in this case, this looks like just getting a normal version of a setting from configuration. In the end, it takes the one from app configuration. If that's not available, it takes the one from the app settings from the app service. If those are not available, it will take the one from app settings.json or web.config. And if that's not available, you'll get an error. But you can stack the different types of configuration providers that you have. This is also something that we see as far as filtering goes, but in the interest of time, I'm going to not dive into that a lot, except for what we say here is that we stack the filters while connecting this app configuration, where we say take the one that's labeled prod if it's available, and if that's not available, take the one that's labeled acceptance. And if that's not available, take test. And if that's not available, then default to not having it's not having a label at all. This will enable you to do some setting stacking. However, this will get the exact same result as what we have deployed right now. Let's go back and see what Key Vault has to offer us. Because Key Vault is actually what it says it is. It's a vault for your keys. It stores secrets, certificates in a vault that you cannot just simply access. You will have to make sure that you are authorized to get access to the Key Vault, and only then you can look inside and you can see tokens, passwords, certificates, like, for instance, API keys or encryption keys, and those are available in the Key Vault. It also enables you to store secrets that are backed by hardware security models. So you can choose to do it either by software or FIPS 142 level 2 validated hardware security modules. So why would you like to use Key Vault? Well, as I said earlier, you don't want app configuration to hold all of your secrets, but then still have a secret that enables somebody to get into application of app configuration. So you would like to securely store your secrets and keys somewhere external, and it would be awesome if those integrate with Azure services. Now, Key Vault is a tool for securing, storing, and accessing secrets, and a vault in this case is a logical group of secrets. So authentication to get there is needed. You can either use a service principal and a secret, or a service principal and a certificate, or you can use managed identity. And let's just have a look at how we do that. So this extra line that I added earlier, and that you might have seen in the previous demo, actually already gives away a little bit how we are going to access Key Vault. But first, let me show you that we have two pages. One is Key Vault 01, and one is Key Vault 02. And Key Vault 01 is the first version of how we are going to connect to Key Vault. Let me give me an enter right there so that we have a little bit clearer view on what's happening. So on the get of this page, we're going to create a new secret client that uses configuration in Azure done right, CLR-Key Vault 2 .vault.azure.net. That's the location of the Key Vault that we created. And then we get the secret from there. And this actually looks a little bit strange because we have a double value at the end. But the first value is the value of the get secret action, which actually returns a Key Vault secret. And a Key Vault secret actually holds quite a few types of information about the secret itself. And one of those things it holds is the value of the secret. So that's the reason we're going to go with value.value. And what this actually does, and then this line is particularly interesting, is it says, I will use a default Azure credential. What this means, and I'm now guessing why did I implement this here, because this should be in Key Vault 02 probably. Did I switch the two around? Let me check real quick. No, this is correct. So what I did here is I'm going to create a secret client, which is actually a class that's been added to a NuGet package that enables us to talk to Key Vault. And I'm going to use a managed identity to connect to this Key Vault. And then a managed identity, and I will dive into this a little bit into more detail later, but a managed identity is actually a service principal that an application or another resource inside of Azure can get, that's actually stored in Azure Active Directory, that you can then use to give role-based access to different types of resources. So what we did here is we created a secret client to talk to our CLR KV2 Key Vault and get secret one from that Key Vault using that managed identity. Now, going back to the application that we had up and running, you can see here that we have this Key Vault 1 page. So that's the page that's actually going to create the secret client and talk to Key Vault for us. And it says, hey, this secret is from Key Vault. Now, what this looks like in the backend in the Azure portal is under this resource group that we have this Key Vault available right here. And this Key Vault is actually the storage of all of the secrets that we would like to have in this Key Vault. And as you can see, let me check real quick. We have some keys here. So for instance, encryption keys that you could add here. Some secrets. So here's the secret one that we're actually getting. And we have certificates. And then there's something really important that I need to tell you, because we used to have the Azure policies, the access policies, sorry. And access policies used Vault access policies. And then you actually had to give identities of Azure Active Directory specific rights, like listing secrets or getting keys, and that was the authentication mechanism. But with the rollout of role-based access control based on managed identities throughout the Azure portal, we now also have access control through Azure role-based access control in preview, as it says right here on the selected bullet. Access control is in preview. So what you do here is you can have role assignments that enable specific applications or specific users to do specific things. Now, as you can see, the website and, well, myself are Key Vault Secrets users, which actually means that these are service principals that can read secret contents. This is the central location where I actually manage who can do what inside of this Key Vault. And because I gave this website access to this Key Vault, I don't need a access token or, sorry, a specific access token or a connection string with a secret to connect, but the Azure platform validates the application itself as being or as having rights to actually connect to this Key Vault. So just a short round trip to the website again, where you can actually, with most resources right now, say, hey, I have an identity, or you have an identity. I put that to be on. And as soon as I add this system assigned identity as on this website, I can go to other resources and give this application access to that resource. I will show you why that's important. So first of all, I'm going to go back once more to the app configuration. And I'm going to show you that right here under Configuration Explorer, we have this one here, which actually has a specific type of icon in front. And it says that this is secret one. And thinking about this, this is actually the same name that I gave that thing in Key Vault. What I actually did was I added, so when you choose create, you can choose between Key Vault or key value or Key Vault reference. What you can do with app configuration is you can give something a name, like very secret, much hidden, and you can select a Key Vault that you would like to access, and then select a secret inside of that Key Vault. So you can have app configuration be the middleman between your application and Key Vault for secrets. The cool thing is your application doesn't need to know, because as with the index or the index page that we saw earlier, here we just said, hey, configuration, get me a value of type string with this name. Because we now have secret one available in app configuration that uses Key Vault to actually store the secret, we can just as well go into our different Key Vault page and say, hey, configuration, get a value of type string, but this time do secret one. And of course, if we go back to the application and we open up the page with Key Vault 2, here is the same secret. So even if I now would change this in the Key Vault, we would get the same secret. I'm going to go straight back into the presentation because I have one very important thing to add. And looking at the time, we are a little bit close. So as I said, managed identities or managed identities for Azure resources are a way of actually creating an identity for your application that provides Azure services with a managed identity in an Active Directory. that you can actually use to identify and authenticate to any service. There's a lot of services supporting it right now, and both on the compute end, like functions and logic apps and app services, as well as and the resource end, like Key Vault and Data Lake and storage for blobs and queues. But let me show you the real power of actually having a managed identity in place. Because I added this extra page right here today that's called storage. And we're first going to dive into code and have a look at what that storage page actually does. So we're going to the storage page, and then we're going here. And then this might seem a bit complex, but it's actually not as much. So I'm going to show you what's actually happening here. We're going to create a container client. And this is a blob container client. So we're going to talk to a container in a blob storage. To know where we would like to have or where that blob storage is located, we're going to get a value from configuration that's called session container. Here again, we'll use the new default Azure credential that enables us to use managed identity to talk to storage. And actually, all of the other things are actually getting a reference to a blob client for a specific file. And in this case, that's called nextsession.txt, getting a memory stream, downloading that blob into that stream, putting the position of the stream back at position 0, reading it, and then we will have the read to async of that reader. So what this piece of code does is it connects to a storage account, gets the next-session.txt file from the session container, and it outputs the content of that file into the next session property. And then if we look at the page itself, of course, the next session is actually shown in a div right here. Now, what we have available as the next session parameter, which is how we're going to connect to our storage account, is actually this one. And whoops, that was a small docking, but that's not big of a deal. Here we have the session container. So this is the setting that I'm actually getting, right? So I'm saying I would like to connect to the container sessions, which is right here, under, wow, I even mistyped Sierra, under this storage account, blob core Windows net. So I'm not specifying any secrets right here. The only thing I'm specifying is the location of a blob container where I would like to get a file from. And then again, if we go into the portal and we look here into our session container value right here, close this one down, okay. If we look at the session container right here, it actually also says, so guide of storage.blob.core.windows.net/session. And just to make sure that you guys and girls know that I'm not having any smoke and mirrors, right here is the storage explorer for the storage account. And under blob containers, there's a session. And under session, there's a nextsession.txt. And this is the file that I would like to display in the page. So once again, I don't have any secrets available anywhere in configuration or in my source code. But because I have a managed identity available, and if I now go to storage, it will use its managed identity to actually go out and go to the blob storage. And then the platform will say, okay, so this is the Seattle website. It has an Azure Active Directory service principal in Active Directory. And under the storage account, this same service principal has gained access to read blobs in this storage account. I don't have connection strings. I don't have secrets. I only have the description for the next session by Tomasz that will be about exploring capabilities of different Azure services for automation on simple and daily tasks. So closing up real quick, configuration, I think, should go into app configuration as soon as more than one application is talking to that configuration, because you would like to minimize the chances of actually human error, because you might update one setting but not the other one. And then if you would like to make sure that you don't even have any secrets anywhere as far as accessing Azure resources goes, have a look if the resource that you are trying to talk to enables you to use managed identities, and please have a look at using those. If you go to theurls.com/configuration in Azure done right, but then abbreviated, so theurls.com/Sjader, there's a lot of links right there about all of the content that was in this session. And of course, you can email me or find me on Twitter and see if you can get me from there if you have any questions left.
Good.
Well, thank you very much for that, Rick. That was a really cool session. There was a lot of really deep stuff in the configuration there. There's a lot of stuff there that I need to take a look at too. I also really want to say thank you for that blast from the past with those INI files. I remember fighting those back in the 90s, and I remember salespeople in our office playing with them when they shouldn't, and then really having to fight with them in the office. That was really cool.
Somehow there was never a backup of the right INI file, right?
No, it was never backup of the right INI file, and everybody always comes out with, I never changed anything, which eventually changes over time to, I changed it, but I changed it back.
Yeah, or I made it better.
Yeah, exactly. We've got one question for you from YouTube, and that is, can automation accounts also get their variables from the app configuration?
Yes. For instance, automation accounts. Wow, that's a good one. I wanted to say yes because I have Power Automate and Logic Apps on top of mine as well. Let's see if Azure Automate, I'm not sure if it's supporting managed identities. The last time I checked, it didn't yet, but that's something that I do need to talk about. Microsoft has actually explicitly said we are going to support managed identities throughout the Azure portal. So they're actually actively working on getting it everywhere. And if I look into Azure Auto Manage, Azure Blueprints, no, currently it's not in the list of, doesn't seem to be in the list of services that support managed identities for resources.
Okay. But hopefully it might come in the future if they're committed to getting this across.
They are committed to getting it across the entirety of Azure, so I would expect it to come in eventually. Because, for instance, blob storage and queue storage both support managed identity at this point. However, table storage in storage accounts doesn't yet. So they're actively working on it.
Okay. Did you have any other questions?
Well, actually, Rick, I had one question for myself, actually. How do you go about, maybe any advice about how do you integrate configuration and your application together in your CI/CD pipeline? Because, well, you don't want your configuration to be out of sync with the changes that you've made in your application. Any advice on that one?
Yeah, that's a good question, by the way. Yes, because Azure App Configuration enables you to use different types of infrastructure as code solutions to update the settings in App Configuration. So what we do right now is we use the Azure CLI, which can be used in the Azure pipelines as well. And we use Azure CLI to keep the settings up to date. As far as it's not secrets, of course, because secrets are going into Key Vault. But there's several infrastructure as code solutions that provide support for setting values in app configuration.
Yeah, so it becomes actually an integrated part of your CI/CD pipeline as any other thing would be.
Yeah, and I think that's the place where you would like it to be, because then everything is repeatable. And if somebody said, I changed it, but I changed it back, then we can just, with a push of the button, know for sure that the values are there that we would expect there to be.
Indeed. I say automate everything.
Automate all the things.
Okay, well, thank you very much again for joining us today. No problem. And Nick, who do we have up next?